All right. Welcome. Super excited to have you here, Dan. This is a very proud moment for me. We met a little while ago in class together, actually.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, we were down in Louisville
Moonshine
for the
University.
Moonshine University Stave and Thief Society's Executive Bourbon Steward Program. A great program, by the way. And, just to drop that free plug for Moonshine University. Um, I had saw your face before, you know, saw General Thomas. That's one of those things that I do is I kind of scroll and I find, some of the NDPs and the craft distilleries and they intrigued me, right? So I said, man, who is this guy? He looks familiar. That's what I was thinking when I was sitting in class. And then, we got introduced and, we've chatted ever since. You were gracious enough to send me a bottle here, which I'll show everyone. Here, this is the 5-year single barrel, 111 proof. That's 55.5% ABV for you science folks there. Barrel strength, and this comes from Barrel 01, so this is very significant. You only forgot one thing. You know what you forgot to do for me, right?
What's that?
You didn't sign it. You didn't sign the
You're
bottle,
right.
man.
All right. I always forget that.
You didn't
So
sign the bottle. I was looking
I don't
for it. I
know.
said,
I
where's
think
the
I'm.
signature?
I'm kind of. I usually don't do that unless people ask. I feel like that's. I don't know. Just something inside of me makes me feel like, why do I want to? Why do I assume that people want my signature? Does that
That's
make sense?
fair. That's
So
fair.
yeah. So.
And it's funny enough. Clay from Moonshine. If you remember Clay, he was the master distiller there in our
Mm,
class.
mm,
I actually purchased a bottle of their PX Sherry that they made that just won 2 awards, by the way, last
mm.
week. It won Best in Class and Best in Show. But I had him sign the bottle when I was there. I kind of had a feeling after I tried it when I was there. I said, "This is good stuff. This is going to win something," and it did. So I'm very grateful to have that bottle. I'm just debating whether I'm going to crack it open or not. I'm gonna have to get another one, but
Well,
nonetheless,
so you've got the elusive barrel number one, and so the reason why that's not as easy to find as you might think is because when the barrels or when the bottles are rolling down the line, and you put barrel number one up there, you've got it already, you've got it at cases, then you put it onto a pallet, and then everything else starts getting stacked on top of it. So it's a good sign that we're at barrel number one right now, um, because that means that it's selling.
okay, that's
Yes, but
that's good
also,
news,
it's
and I
it's
can
hard
see
to
why
find.
it's selling.
Mhm.
Uh, I tried to wait until today, but I must be honest. I cracked it open last week. Uh, I was
It's good.
impatient. It's good,
Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
after I scanned the QR code, which we're going to talk about a little bit later with your integration of technology there. But um, I want to know what made you start your own brand.
Well, I love bourbon, and I'm not an expert. I'm a lot more of an expert now after Moonshine University than I was, but I've just always liked it. I feel like I like it mostly because it evokes a lot of good memories and community. So when you're in college and or people are pounding beers or whatever, that's one thing. But like when you get to be a more mature, I feel like this is a drink that we bring out in my family when we're going to sit around and have good conversation. We're going to sit around with buddies. Uh, People come into town. Being in Kentucky, there is a hope and an expectation when people come to visit that we're going to have a bourbon. When they're here. So I've just always loved bourbon and what it symbolizes in my life. I've wanted to start my own brand for a while just because I always thought it would be a fun challenge. And It was more as an NDP that was tough to do a few years back. It got to be a little easier over the last year or two. So just kind of a lot of I'm phasing myself. I'm a commercial real estate investor, and I'm phasing myself out of that business. My son's taken over, and so I was looking for something to keep me busy. And so I've never worked. I mean, if I crush it, I could make hundreds of dollars a year doing this. So
No, that's awesome. So you raise a good point. You've had a diverse entrepreneurial background, right? You mentioned commercial real estate. So it looks like you've done several things that have led to this point. Is that safe to say?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay. So, with that being said, why bourbon? I mean, we talked about the family and everything. Why bourbon? Why General Thomas? Why Fort Thomas? What about that man and that name that just captivated you?
Well, I kind of told you why I wanted to start a bourbon brand, but specifically General Thomas because I live in a town called Fort Thomas. There's a lot of towns in northern Kentucky that have the word fort in front of them because it was a pretty important area during the Civil War. Um, but the idea really came from Remus, George Remus. I mean, that's a really fun story to tell. He's the most famous bootlegger there was, and he's from Cincinnati. So his main base of operations was here in Cincinnati. And so I love the picture of the guy on the bottle. I loved when I found out what the story was, I would Google it, I would memorize the story, I would hand out a few bottles for Christmas or as thank yous. And then next time I wanted to give out a gift, I would have to go through the same process because I would forget about it. You know, there's not a lot of information out there about him. So I just always wanted to, I developed this desire to not only start a bourbon company, but also call it General Thomas because I love the town we live in. It's called Fort Thomas. It's just a great town, walkable, lots of cool things, great parks, events, and things like that. And so I thought it would be fun to do a bourbon more just as a hobby for our town, call it General Thomas, have it in a few stores here, and just kind of check that off the box saying, yeah, that was a challenge and we did that. That was fun, And so with this extra feature that it has related to the AI that we'll probably get into, I assume, it is catching on a lot more than I was expecting. And so it's become more than a hobby. It's really spreading quickly, which is a lot of fun.
Well, since you brought it up, let's talk about this technology. I mean, to me, I've never seen that before, right? Your card in the packaging said to follow these instructions, scan the QR code, and literally the general was talking back to me, and I thought that was very unique. So, how'd you come up with that?
Well, so the first thing before we get into that is I like to lead with the bourbon because
Okay.
if I walk into a store and I see a a bottle that's shaped like a football or something like that, the first thing that pops into my head is if that bourbon was any good, they probably wouldn't need to use a bottle like that, And I might be incorrect in that. I'm just saying that's an assumption that I make. So maybe the
That's
bourbon
fair.
is amazing.
No, that's fair.
And so I like to make sure, like whenever I'm doing a tasting, I say, let's try the bourbon first. And as they're sipping on the bourbon, I want to get their first reaction, and then I start going into the next part.
Okay.
So what do you think of? Let's talk
Let's-
more about
all
what
right,
you think
so let's
about the
talk
bourbon.
about what's inside the bottle before we talk about what's on the outside of it. So, the liquid that's inside of this bottle, right? What can people expect when they crack this bottle? What were you going for?
Well, again, I'm an NDP, so I was trying to find it was important for me to find a source of good bourbon. I didn't want to be involved with a product that, like I said, was just a gimmick. I wanted to find a product that I knew would be well respected in the market as soon as people started tasting it. And so this has, I'm a more of a rye guy than a wheat guy, and so I wanted a rye mash bill, and so this has got a bit more of rye in this mash bill than most.
What is the mash bill in this batch 01?
65 corn, 30 rye, and 5 malted barley.
Okay.
So now, when people hear the mash bill, what they're expecting though is like this is going to have some burn to it, when it hits their mouth. And what I have found is that most people, when they try it, they're surprised by not only the fact that it's got a higher rye content than a lot of them do, and it's barrel strength. Almost universally, when people taste it, they go, "Wow, that's smoother than I was expecting." So
Very
I don't know.
approachable.
Yeah, yeah. So
Very, very approachable. I just took my first sip, and I'll be honest with you. Listening to you as you were saying that, um, this is good, man. This is good. The nose, first of all, is so welcoming. I was thinking about what you said with the mash bill. Obviously, having that rye count, in the 30s, that changes things a little bit, right? You know, it's you're expecting more of that punch, as you said, but no, this is really good. And now I'm feeling that hug right now as we're talking. It's coming back. It just knocked and said, "Hey, I'm still here," and I like it. I like it a lot, man. 111 proof. I would really love to see what this does in a blind, right? You know how hard blinds can be determining the proofs, the mash bills, and those things. Kind of some of the stuff that we did in class down there at the executive bourbon steward class. It's challenging. It challenges you and your senses, right? And I'm a huge proponent of sensory training. That I was in love with that sensory kit that we got in the class. I sit down with it often. I'll sit down with that in one of my wheels, and I'll just look at the different spices, the different notes, the sweets, the botanicals, the grains, and just try to pick things apart, man. But this is amazing. I'm gonna take another sip. Hold on, okay? Oh yeah.
yeah, I especially love the smell of it. I love the smell of it. Like when the alcohol burns off and your glass is just about empty, and then I put it up to my nose. I'm like, oh gosh, I love the way this smells. So
And you know what else is funny? I know this is gonna probably sound weird, but for me, I love when it gets down to about here. It changes for me. Have you ever noticed that from the first few pours to when a bottle gets down towards halfway, it opens up. I think something about the oxygen inside of that bottle gets to moving around a little bit, and it sits a little bit, and it just changes, in a good way.
yeah, it's
In
interesting.
a good way.
I'm going to be entering my first round of contests, San Francisco and the SIP Awards and things like that. And I was looking online at best practices on how to do that, and there's a lot of folks that suggest pouring off like the first ounce of it, so you get rid of the stuff that's in the neck, so you're down in a little bit more of the belly of the bottle. Then you reseal it again before you ship it. But yeah, I think that there is something to be said for letting it get down there as opposed to drinking the stuff right out of the bottle when you first open it. So
All right, so we've talked about what's inside the glass now, right? This is again very approachable. Uh, the mash bill is right in that area that I like. Um, I definitely can see you doing a rye in the future. I'm sure you've already been thinking that through.
yeah, I am. I'm stuck right now, trying to figure out whether or not I want to try to market it a little bit heavier with exactly what I've got, or try to spread out the number of offerings. And so I haven't decided that yet. So
Because you also have a small batch, right?
yeah, we have a 99 proof as well. So I
Okay.
was yeah, that's a blend of 5 barrels at a time. Same exact juice that goes into the bottles. It's just 5 bottles spread out and proof down to 99. So, and it's pretty much 50-50. I mean, we're up to a couple thousand bottles sold, and it is almost exactly 50-50 on what people prefer. So it's
Okay.
nice to have at least a couple different offerings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Being the rye guy that you said you are, I'm sure a 95.5 is somewhere down the line. For those, what was the term that Laura Lee used? Rye drinkers, we choose violence, I think she said. I think that's what she said when we were in class. We choose violence. So,
Yes.
and it's funny because I was not a rye drinker 2 years ago. Absolutely despised rye, but now I've developed a palate for it. Not so much the earthy, minty ryes, right? But there's a sweet spot in the rise that I thoroughly enjoy, and I think being in that 30% mash bill kind of hits it. You know what I mean? You still get a strong influence of the corn, but I think that you've nailed it with this one. So, all right, we know what's in the glass. Now let's talk about what's on it.
All right. Well, so I was telling you that whenever I wanted to give the Remus away, I would have to Google the story. And so I thought it would be fun to do something where the bottle told the story as opposed to, people having to figure it out or hear it themselves. So I wanted to, animate General Thomas and have him tell the story of the bourbon. And that was, becoming a reality when I started coming up with this, which was like a year ago Christmas. So that's when AI started kind of, making it possible to animate photographs and things like that. And so that was really it. It was just going to be General Thomas telling the story of the bourbon, or himself. And so there is a function of that on the bottle. When you scan it, it'll give you the option to hear the story of the brand, hear the story of himself, his battle. He's the most successful Civil War general there was. He was born in the South, raised in West Virginia, and then fought for the North, and then never lost a battle. So critical general. So it was a good story. But when I was at this Christmas party getting ready to, pull all these pieces together and start, my buddy who owns a tech company said, boy, if you're going to be using AI already, it would be really cool if you could figure out a way to personalize every single bottle in some fashion. So I started thinking about that. I kind of was kicking it around. I came up with a one-pager that I thought would, if the bottle could do all of this, that would be really cool, which is not only play the stories, having General Thomas speak them, but allow you to customize it in some way. So I came up with a one-pager. I gave it to an AI company that I was invested in. Their engineering team took a look at it and came back and they said, yeah, we can. It's going to take multiple weeks to do this. We'll have a team of people working on it. It's definitely doable. It's going to cost you $250,000 to come up with the tech. And so that was not something I was interested in investing in at that time, because I had no idea what I was even committing to, or if it was going to be cool or not. So I ended up giving it to a buddy of mine, one of my best friends. Son was graduating from Georgia Tech, and he's kind of like an AI savant. He had already worked for a few startups by the time he graduated, and he was starting in another one. And I gave him the paper, and basically he came up with it in a couple of weeks, and for $5,000 he had it nailed. And I mean, it is good. It's solid. I mean, we had a few glitches when it first came out that we had to work through, but since then, I don't think we've had one single experience not work, and since the first month it was introduced. So it's pretty amazing for new tech like this.
So I got a question for you. Do you feel that this technology is the future of storytelling when it comes to the spirits industry?
Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's obviously, it makes a lot more sense when there is like a photograph on the bottle or something that can be animated, as opposed to having a brand with just words on it and then having something animate. I think that getting the story of the brand is really important for brands to communicate to people. That's why these new NDPs are doing so well, because usually each one of them is attached to some kind of interesting story, But the customization part of it, I'm not really sure how that plays into the future or not, So I just think it's really kind of an interesting time in history where we can do this, and it's not. So the other thing about AI too is like if you took a person and you animated them and you put, you could make them say custom things or whatever. There's a certain amount of people that think that's kind of creepy. Hey, you're trying to fool us. This isn't real person. This is AI. And so when we take a 160-year-old picture and we animate it, nobody's believing that we're trying to trick anybody. It's just a cool way to bring history to life and a customization where it's just kind of like the sweet spot of you're using AI, but you're not using it to a degree where you're trying to, where it makes people feel uncomfortable. So.
No, I agree. There has been a lot of deception with AI. We can agree on that. But I think that it's pretty transparent when you're seeing, again, someone who, has a historical figure that's no longer with us telling a story, right? So obviously it's no deception there. It is what it is. So I agree with you 100%. You mentioned the customization. Tell me a little bit more about what that looks like. With the customization for this type of tech.
Let me see if I don't know how easy it would be to see this on camera, but if I'll just pretend we're doing a tasting or something like that, and somebody is now sipping their bourbon and they're agreeing that it's delicious. And so I say, okay, the first thing is that when we print the QR codes on these bottles, every single bottle has its own QR code, meaning that everyone's different. Every bottle that we'll ever produce will have its own website. Okay, so which allows it to be customized. So you don't have to download an app or anything like that. You've got you see a pop up here. Okay, so we've got.
Congratulations, you're holding some of the finest bourbon ever distilled, and trust me.
I'll skip that.
I know. Now then, would you like to hear a story, or leave a message for the fortunate recipient of this fine bourbon?
So he's going to give you the option to hear those stories, which is the story of the brand and things like that I was telling you about. But if you click on leave a message, so we applied for a patent on this part. There's no other brand that's doing this. Not only no bourbon brand, but no consumer brand that does this yet. So when you click leave a message.
All right then, tell me what to say and I'll personally deliver your message. Like a cannonball wrapped in charm.
Okay, so this text box pops up. You can type a message in there. It could be up to 350 characters. When you click generate, General Thomas will reanimate. He will repeat your message back to you again. And if you accept it, it locks it into that bottle. And that is the only bottle in the world that has that message now. Does that make sense? And so I'm going to just type in Joe. I'll do this with the microphone. It was a lot of fun being on your podcast today. Thank you for the opportunity to tell the world about General Thomas Bourbon. Okay, so I'm going to click on generate. It does take, so there's a couple different steps in the tech stack that have to happen now. So you'll see the little thing spinning there. It takes about 45 seconds for this to happen, but it's going to something that's going to generate or convert my text to this deep voice that you heard. And after that, it's going to go to then something else that takes the voice and animates the picture into it and then sends it back. It goes through AWS and all that kind of stuff and sends it back until it's. And so we have to give. So we are using a few different AI platforms and smushing them together to make this happen. And so there is a cost involved every single time a customer does that. So we can't give people unlimited chances to do it, but we give them up to 3 chances in case they make a mistake. So it just popped up. So let's just play it.
Joe, it was a lot of fun being on your podcast today. Thank you for the opportunity to tell the world about General Thomas Bourbon.
So think of all the cool things you could do with that, right?
Yeah,
It's very personalized. It's like, and then, so if I accept it, if I'm going to accept this message.
Now, if the neck tag is still on your bottle, make sure to flip it over so the lucky recipient of this bourbon will know they've got your special message waiting for them and just need to scan the QR code to hear it.
Okay, so when you grab a bottle, it's got the message that it talks back to you. So after you record it, you flip the neck tag over, and that way, if you're giving it to somebody and you're not standing there right with them, it tells them they've got a custom message waiting for them, and they just have to scan the QR code to hear it. And so the patentable part of it is that there is nothing out there right now where if something is customized, it's usually the brand that customizes it for you. They make you a special label, they engrave it or whatever. But this is the consumer that takes that product, every single product that comes off of our line can be completely customized individually by the consumer, and then the next one could be completely customized in a different way. So, and then once you click on save the message, it changes that bottle forever, and now that is the very first thing that plays every time the code is scanned after that.
So what you're telling me is that when the Bourbon Pitmaster does a barrel selection with General Thomas in the near future, we could make a customizable message to those that have supported me and picked up a bottle of that barrel select.
Yeah, now you could make all of them say the same thing, but it would be custom for that barrel selection, or you could also customize, do an additional step and say, hey, Bill, you were there on December 14th when we did this barrel selection. There's only 180 bottles of this available, and you've got one of them, so enjoy it. That type of thing.
I think that's a drop the mic moment right there, Dan. That's a drop the mic moment right there.
Yeah,
that's
it's cool. I mean, it is so much so. It is so exciting. I did a trade show called Bourbon Con not too long ago, and so I added up all the times that I gave this presentation in over 2 days. It was 600 times, and so gave out 600 samples and said 600. I was just excited to talk about it the 600th time as I was the first time. I mean, this is like when you see people's reaction on this, especially if you've given it to them as a gift or something like that, and it's always the same thing. It's like, wait, what? How did you do that? And so it's just really fun. So
I love it, man.
I gotta leave with the bourbon though. You don't want to be giving a cool thing like this away and then have people taste the bourbon and go, well, it's really fun, but the bourbon is not that great.
No, they like you led off with, what's inside matters just as much, if not more, than what's on the outside of this label.
Yeah, if it's a gimmick, it's not going to last. If it's good bourbon, people will go back and buy it, and regardless of whether the QR code is there or not. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be a gift. I put dirty jokes on mine when I'm at, for the ones I keep in my own house, and so my buddies come over to have a sip and like, what do you have on your bottle now? And so I'll give them my latest one, and it's, we have content filters because you don't want hate speech. You don't want it to get too out of hand, but we do want to let people have fun with it. So we're always, tweaking the content filters to allow certain things in to make it a fun experience, but then at the same time protecting people and the brand with certain things that we just can't let it say.
So you've literally answered one of my next questions. Is this a gimmick, or is this the future of brand storytelling? And I think you've just said it so elegantly that this is the future of brand storytelling. I mean, again, as long as what's inside matches up with what's on the outside of that bottle, right?
Right. There's so many brands out there with cool stories that you really have to either have it like just happen upon it at a tasting or whatever, or see an article, or just research, do a bunch of research yourself. But if the bottle could tell a story, even let's just forget about the customization for a second. Just the bottle is telling the cool story. I think that, you scan a QR code, and there's probably brands that are doing this. I'm not going to say this is not being done, but I do think it needs to be done more, especially with these NDPs and little, a friend of my son's is going to go to work for a brand called Never Say Die. And so I was like, that's a really cool name. And I Googled it, and it's just such a cool story about a horse that was born, and it was on its deathbed right after its birth. And so somebody gave it a shot of whiskey, and it ended up perking up and surviving, and then going to have this illustrious winning career as a racehorse. And so that's just a cool story. I think that, and so like I was saying about like bourbon being a cool community friend story thing, it's also cool to be able to tell the story of the bourbon as you're serving it to people, So
it's an experience, right?
It enhances it, and that's what kind of bourbon is. I think it's an experience, and so.
No, this is awesome, Dan. I think you're onto something here. I also noticed that you have a affinity for veterans and supporting them. What brought that about?
Well, my dad was in the Air Force. He passed a year ago, exactly today, as a matter of fact. And so, and I live in a military town, called Fort Thomas. So there are things associated with veterans all over the town. Half the town is an old, you know, military installation, and so the veterans of Fort Thomas are very active, and so we are. General Thomas means a lot more to them than it does, to some other people, and so we just want to partner with them and support what they're into.
That's awesome, man. First of all, my condolences to you and to your family on the anniversary of your father's death.
Thanks.
I thank you for taking time out on this day to chat with me about whiskey. You could be doing many other things, but I'm grateful for this opportunity. I don't take it lightly. And kudos to you for the work that you're doing to support the veterans. Obviously, where you live, as you mentioned, is a historic place. A lot of, history there when it comes to veterans. So I get the correlation now with you and the things that you've done for veterans over the years. What's next for General Thomas Bourbon?
Well, we are an interesting product because I feel like most people don't go into a liquor store expecting to find something like us. Does that make sense? And so, if you go into someplace that sells bourbon, especially in Kentucky, they've got quite a big selection in a lot of stores. I mean, there's a lot of great brands out there. So we are trying to set ourselves apart as, not only great bourbon, but kind of like the ultimate gift, whether it be a corporate gift or a personal gift. And so it's just a way to get noticed, and we're hoping to really maximize that. So what's next for us is really just getting the word out to the world. We have a website where we can sell to 42 states, and we're also trying to get licensed in more states right now. Right now we're only licensed in Kentucky, but we've applied for all the neighboring states as well, and working on distributorships there. So I think that I'm not really gonna say it's a fun, unique, really interesting, delicious product. What's the lifespan? Who knows? You know what I mean? So I feel like just the way that technology is progressing, we have a window of opportunity right now where we can really maximize the uniqueness of this product. And so I just want to work to do that. Get the word out and then have a lot of fun with it while we can. So.
Oh, sounds good, man. We're going to have to work on getting you to Michigan. Have to get you here and hook up with me, and maybe I'll put some barbecue together. I think I've told you that I own Smoky Joe Barbecue here locally. We own food trucks.
Yeah.
So I started with competition barbecue and whiskey. That's how I got the name, the Bourbon Pitmaster. So I think between my barbecue and your whiskey, and obviously I love my cigars, I think we
Yes.
have a great combination. So Dan, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Look forward to talking with you more in the future. Let's stay connected. Let's stay connected. And I'm going to champion your brand because I've tried it and it's good. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate folks like you so much because people that that really know about bourbon. It's probably the biggest compliment that I get. When somebody like you tries it and likes it, I like the tag. It's really unique, but I don't know. I get so much more satisfaction with somebody like you trying the bourbon and giving it a compliment. So thank you for taking the time and for having me on the podcast today. But I really appreciate the kind words about the bourbon.
absolutely, Dan. Until next time.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you.